Hello, everybody. So, looking here, I want to go over for today's video the Louisiana Purchase. So, looking at the Louisiana Purchase, we're talking about Thomas Jefferson, Meriwether Lewis, and William Clark. And our goal is to be able to describe the Louisiana Purchase, the impact that it had on America, and the impact that it had on Native Americans specifically. So, just to kind of consider an opening question here, how would you react to your school building doubling in size? So, how would that impact your route getting to your classes? The population doesn't change in the school building, but the size of the building changes. I'm just kind of considering that as our opening thought here. Would your classes be in different places? Would it take you longer to change classes? Would your classes be smaller sizes? Would you be exploring new spots around the now larger building? Because that's what happens in the Louisiana Purchase. What we have in the Louisiana Purchase is the country doubles in size. So the green on this map here is the United States as it already existed. And the blue is the Louisiana Territory, owned by France and is sold to the United States in 1803. Now, in 1803, Thomas Jefferson is the President of the United States. Now, Thomas Jefferson, if we remember, is an anti-federalist, meaning that he does not believe in a strong central government. So he is in a position now where he is being offered a very large territory for a great price of $15 million, which works out to be about 3 cents an acre. And Thomas Jefferson knows that there is no spot in the Constitution that gives him the power to make this purchase. However, he uses the logic of his old nemesis, Alexander Hamilton, that it's an implied power, that the president can make this purchase of the Louisiana Territory based on the implied powers given to him in the Constitution. So he has to kind of use that Federalist mentality to make this purchase because he believes that this is going to be beneficial for the country going forward. To double the size of our geographic territory in the country and get it at a great price. So when we're looking at this territory here, Thomas Jefferson now has to decide, okay, we bought this territory. What's on this territory? Who's out there? What can we have? How do I get people to move out there? So what he does is he hires a team, Lewis and Clark, to go out on an expedition to map out the route that he found. Thomas Jefferson is hoping that there is one waterway that connects the entire country. There is not. But the goal is to get from one coast to the other. So what we have is Lewis and Clark going on their journey, writing down what they see, mapping out their route, finding new species, new animals, plants, but also encountering many Native American nations. And while they are encountering those nations, they have Sacagawea with them, a teenage girl who is going to be the translator. So she is a Native American young woman who is translating for Lewis and Clark on their journey as they are encountering several Native American nations along their expedition here. Now, when we are talking about these Native Americans, it's important for us to understand their perspective on this. So there's a great article on learning justice, and this is a quote from that article. I think continuing to glorify exploitation as exploration is dangerous. We are in recovery from discovery. So talking about Native Americans and looking at things from their perspective is very important. When we look at the quote unquote discovery of these new nations, of Native American tribes, they were exploited for their knowledge, for their resources. Sacagawea was exploited as somebody who could translate, who could benefit Lewis and Clark. And when we say we are in recovery from discovery, that is talking about Native Americans who were exploited, who were kicked off their land, who were moved off of their land, who were enslaved, who were killed, who lost everything in the name of manifest destiny, in the name of we are discovering our new territory, we are out here exploring, and recognizing that position is very important for us. It's also important for us to understand that Lewis and Clark are very complex individuals. They are not just explorers who went out and um, saw all these new things. They had very complex personalities and opinions. And one piece that points that out is a man named York. Now, this statue went up in Portland, Oregon, October of 2020, and it depicts York. And the statement explaining who he was on that statue reads in part, though York was an enslaved laborer, he performed all the duties of a full member of the expedition. He was a skilled hunter, negotiated trade with Native Americans, attended to the sick, and upon his return east with the Corps of Discovery, York asked for his freedom, and Clark refused his request. So this is just really important for us to understand the multifaceted level of our history, to decolonize our understanding of history, and to recognize that there are multiple perspectives here on this journey, and there are multiple people who did not get credit for all the work that they did. So looking up York could be a good person to just understand a little bit more about Lewis and Clark's journey. Now, one thing that we always want to practice is reading primary sources. So we have two primary sources here that I want to take a look at with you. So the first is Thomas Jefferson's letter to Meriwether Lewis in 1803, explaining to him what his goals are for Lewis and Clark's journey. So he's asking them to inquire and get acquainted with the Native Americans that are going to be out on this new territory. Among things like the numbers, how many there are, learn about their language, their traditions, learn about the diseases that are prevalent, learn about their laws, learn about their trading, who they're friends with, who their enemies are, and consider the interest of every nation that you encounter. What could they want? What could they need? And the troubling language that's used here is as it may better enable those who endeavor to civilize and instruct them in the future. So acknowledging that civilize is a term that is used to kind of diminish and demean a group of people and saying that they are less than. So understanding that this is the mentality of Thomas Jefferson and the mentality of Meriwether Lewis, who is receiving this letter. And we'll see a speech by Lewis in just a moment. But just to end on this quote here, in all your interactions with the natives, treat them in the most friendly and peaceful manner which their own conduct will admit. So as long as they are friendly and peaceful, you should be friendly and peaceful in return. Reduce all their fears as to object to your journey. Satisfy them of its innocence. So Thomas Jefferson wants Lewis and Clark to make sure that the Native Americans aren't tipped off that this is a bad thing. Make them think that this is great. Make them think that this is just an innocent journey. Don't make them think that anything bad is going to come of this. So in the second primary source that we look at, this is Meriwether Lewis's speech to one of the Native American nations, in which he addresses these people as children several times. He also refers to Thomas Jefferson in the speech as the great chief of the 17 great nations of America. The language that he used is cringy to say the least. He's using this weird way of trying to use language that he thinks makes his message relatable, but it also has undertones of just inappropriate and patronizing. He refers to the old fathers of these Native American nations, the French and the Spaniards, and that with great council it was agreed that all the red men, the natives of Louisiana, would obey the commands of this great chief of America. He has accordingly adopted them as his children, and they now form one common family with us. So, saying that Thomas Jefferson has adopted you all into the United States is Not the case, because they are not adopting the Native Americans as U.S. citizens. They are not welcoming them into the country. They're going to exploit them for the knowledge and resources that they have. So again, addressing him, Thomas Jefferson, as the great chief, has become your only father. He is the only father. He is the only friend to whom you can now look to for protection. So really painting this image that Jefferson is in charge. He is the one that you can go to, and he is the only one that you can go to. Also, anything that comes from the United States is protected. So anytime you see your great father's flag, do not obstruct passage of any boat, ship, or vessel, or else. And this last paragraph is where we get into the or else. So do these things which your great father advises, and be happy. So be happy about all these things that you're being asked to do. By one false step, you should bring upon your nation the displeasure of your great father. So if you make Jefferson mad, he'll consume you as the fire consumes the grass of the plains. So very quickly we turn to this threatening language. If you displease him, he could pleasure in shutting down any trade that you have, any resources that you have access to. But it is not his wish to injure you. On the contrary, he is pursuing your happiness. So very weird language here, and very charged and motivated language here. And we really get the lens on how Lewis and Clark and Thomas Jefferson and many of those in the United States at the time viewed Native Americans, viewing them as a resource that could be exploited, a hurdle, an obstacle that was in the way. And once you got that knowledge, they were of no use to you anymore. So very important to understand the multiple perspectives here when we're talking about the journey of Lewis and Clark as it relates to the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. So I hope this video helped to explain things a little bit, do a little recap for you. Thank you all for watching.